Leader, you may take the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, as I begin, let me, Honorable Speaker, with your indulgence, note that following the issue that was raised on the floor of the House, as the Paralympics team visited the House and a number of members raised issues regarding the conduct of the Ministry of Sports and how they treated that particular team. There are also issues that emerged about other teams and other players within the sporting fraternity. And it was on that basis, Honorable Speaker, when you asked me to rise in my place and speak to the issue, I did commit that we will cause the Minister for Sports, who is here today, to appear before the House so that he may answer to the questions that are in the order paper, together with other issues that may have arisen. However, Honorable Speaker, with your indulgence, before I read the questions to the Minister, I am in receipt of a letter which was received in my office yesterday, dated 21st August this year. Honorable Speaker, if you can protect me from this noise.
Honorable Koyo and your colleagues. Order. Honorable Koyo. Honorable Koyo. You can hold a kampunja out there, Honorable Koyo. You don't have to do it in the walkway.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I was saying before I read out the questions, I am in receipt of a letter that was copied to me, addressed to yourself and the Speaker of the Senate, the Honorable Amason Kingi, from the Minister, Cabinet Secretary Sports, Honorable Ababu Namwamba. And Honorable Speaker, I want to beg your indulgence because this is a public document. I read it out to the House. And he says that the attention of our ministry has been drawn to statements made respectively by Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah MP, Majority Leader, National Assembly, and Honorable Simon Cherargei MP, Nandi, Senator, which statements purport to cast aspersions on the Ministry of Youth Affairs, the Arts and Sports. Parliament is a hallowed house of record, rules and preeminent honor, with well-laid standing orders backed by age-old established normative customs, usages, and traditions. Among the immutable norms of parliamentary practice include non-admissibility of hearsay and not condemning anyone unheard, and in the absence. Indeed, these basic rules of natural justice apply to Parliament in recognition of its eminent status not only as a supreme institution of representation of the will of the people, but also as a quasi-judicial organ. Further, Parliament has a formal oversight mechanism through the committee system that ensures all executive actions are checked within established official structures. Private members' questions and motions, as well as summons, are part of this oversight architecture. We believe our ministry is performing optimally in sync with the bottom-up government's bottom-up economic transformation agenda. We are also available and open to robust parliamentary oversight within established official mechanisms, including through the relevant oversight committees of the August House. And it is in this context that the ministry writes to inform you, Honorable Speakers, of our readiness and availability to appear before the August Houses to respond to the specific issues raised by the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah MP, National Assembly, and the Honorable Simon Cherargei MP, Senate, at the earliest opportunity. speakers, the assurances of us regard, signed by Honorable Ababu Namwamba, EGH Cabinet Secretary. That letter was copied to the head of public service and chief of staff, Felix Koskei, myself, and the leader of majority in the Senate, Senator Julius Murgo, the chair of Labor Social Welfare, Honorable Dan Wanyama, and Senator Simon Cherargei, MP, Senator Nandi County. Honorable Speaker, I have chosen to read this letter out because I find it extremely condescending on the House. Extremely condescending. And while I appreciate that the minister has opted to come to the House, he has appeared to the House on invitation by the House, not him inviting himself, as he seems to imply in this letter. Two, Honorable Speaker, even before the minister answers the questions that are before him, we would want him to tell the House which is this hearsay that he alludes to. Two, Honorable Speaker, or three, the minister says is available for open, robust parliamentary oversight within the established official mechanisms, including through the relevant oversight committees of the House. In my reading and interpretation of that statement, it seems, Honorable Speaker, that the minister is alluding that he is okay to appear before the committees, relevant committees, but he has a problem with being oversighted by plenary. And it must be on record, Honorable Speaker, neither the leader of majority nor any member of parliament is here serving at the whim of any cabinet secretary. We are here as the people's representatives to oversight cabinet secretaries and officers of government in line with our mandate as espoused in Articles 94 to 96 of our Constitution. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I found this letter rather condescending to the institution of Parliament. And when a minister says that we are raising issues on hearsay, it is only fair, not to the leader of majority or to the Honorable Wanjiku Muhia who raised that issue and the other members who spoke to it. And Honorable Speaker, I do not care about what Honorable Cherargei may have said or might have said outside Parliament, whether on Twitter or Facebook or anywhere else. But what is transacted within the plenary of this House, we do so rightfully as members of Parliament who oversight government. And Honorable Speaker, for the record, I want to state it to this minister and all ministers. As leader of majority, I do not hold brief for any cabinet secretary. I am hired by the people of Kikuyu and the members of the Kenya Kwanza coalition to lead them as a first amongst equals. But that does not take away my role to oversight anybody. From His Excellency the President, in the executive, all cabinet secretaries, and anybody, whatever cadre you are in the executive, I will hold you to account and I will oversight you. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I needed that to be made clear for the record, for this cabinet secretary and others, because some may be misguided to believe that as leader of majority, I am here holding brief for cabinet secretaries. When it comes to matters of accountability, I will hold you to account as if I am the leader of minority. I will hold you to account the same way a member of ODM or Wiper would hold you to account, because that is my mandate, Honorable Speaker. But when it comes to advancing and pushing government business and agenda in the House, I will do the same with the same gusto and energy. I will oversight you. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I wanted it to be clear that as much as I work for the Kenya Kwanza Alliance as the leader of majority and for the people of Kenya, that must never be misconstrued to mean that I will not hold any minister to account. The very reason the President moved the House to amend our standing orders is because none other than the President, who has hired cabinet secretaries, want these cabinet secretaries to be accountable to the people through their elected representatives. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, allow me to now read the questions as they are on the order paper.
Minority Leader, 2 minutes. Honorable Andai.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Speaker, first and foremost, I have just come to learn of that letter 2 minutes ago. Mr. Speaker, first and foremost, that letter should have been copied to me as the leader of minority. The cabinet secretary must be reminded that in this House, the order of precedence is such that after the Speaker and the leader of majority is the leader of minority. And anything transacted in this House belongs to the House, not to the coalition of majority or minority. That is one. Two, I want to advise the minister to be a good student of history. When you hear Honorable Kimani Chungwa, Honorable Senator Sirarige, Honorable Deputy Speaker Gladys Boss speak in the manner they spoke, you should take notice. Because it reminds me of, I think, 1989, when a similar narrative started here by the late Honorable Mwenje against the then Vice President Joseph Njuguna Karanja. We all know what happened in the end. But on a more serious note, this House can choose to transact its business in the manner it deems fit. It is not for anybody else to direct it how to go about transacting its business, including the business of inviting people to this House. Under Article 95, I think Article 2, this House has got the mandate to deal with issues concerning the people, issues of concern to the country. And there is no greater issue that is of concern to the country than the plight of sportsmen and women. And therefore, this House is in order to raise those queries that it raised in the manner it did. And therefore, I would want to ask you, Mr. Speaker, that even before we go to the issues, substantive questions, the matter of this letter needs to be addressed. Yes, by way of you making a pronouncement, where this is the way we shall be proceeding in this House. You know, as a coalition, we have got issues with ministers coming here. I'm sure you know that, Honorable Speaker. But even as they come, we must set the record straight on how they are going to engage with this House and how they are going to treat issues that emanate from this House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, anything that is pronounced on the floor of this House does not really belong to the person making the pronouncement. It is the House. And if the leader of majority or the leader of minority or any other member raises an issue on the floor of this House, it ceases being their issue. It ceases being their personal issue. It becomes an issue of the House and for the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Now, Honorable, 1 minute only. Kajuan, then I give direction.
Mr. Speaker, when matters such as this arise, probably it is good enough that a few members who have been around may also share their sentiments. Mr. Speaker, with all that the majority leader and the minority leader has said, I want to take a different tangent. I think that there is a disorder in the House. Right now, there is disorder in the House. And until that disorder has been solved in our own wisdom, and only to participate and say the things that we want them to say here. Yes. For a witness, even before appearing before us, to give us a lengthy lecture about hearsays and say that what we are doing here, we are purporting. We are purporting to do the things that we are doing here. We are purporting. And to allow this witness to write to the Speaker, where is even the protocol of writing to the Speakers of the Houses? Once we have issued the summons, and the Constitution allows us that we can summon anybody, whether in plenary or in committee, to come before us. Now, how is it that a witness decides, therefore, with, raises upon a stool and decides to address the presiding officer of this House and lectures him accordingly? And the culture that we should adopt when we deal with these matters.
You made your point.
Now, the last point I want to make, Mr. Speaker, sir. The last point I want to make, Mr. Speaker, since we changed the standing orders, if we allow this unaddressed, then the executive or anybody else under whom we supervise will have the latitude, because there is something called precedence. I know the witness wants us to talk about the traditions. He also knows about something called precedence. If we allow him to go with this unattended, then of course we have lost our value in holding these people to account. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that there is a disorder in the House, and until this disorder has been dealt with by getting this this insubordinate witness, this very insubordinate witness, well, not hostile. Hostile will give me problems, but insubordinate to this House. That must be taken out before we can go. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, order. Indeed, I found, as your speaker, the content of the letter read by the majority leader strange. And this goes majority leader inform all the cabinet ministers that they come to answer questions guided by you as the majority leader, who is the nexus between this House and the executive. And writing to Mr. Speaker after he has given direction is inadvisable. So going to the future, you may need to communicate to all cabinet secretaries on how to engage the House. And more particularly, once the chair has given direction on the matter, no minister has any right to give value judgment on that direction. Because what the content of that letter is giving value judgment on the direction of the chair. It's out of order. And to cut a long story short, Minister, you will be required to rescind in totality the content of that letter, send an apology to the House, then we move on with answering the questions that are before us. Go ahead, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable members of this very august House. Let me, Mr. Speaker, from the outset, make it absolutely succinctly and unambiguously clear that I subject myself to the authority and oversight of this House in totality. That should not be in doubt whatsoever, Honorable Speaker. Let me also make it clear that the correspondence that has been referenced here was authored and conveyed in good faith, and I would apologize unreservedly if in any way that letter has created.
Don't give a conditional apology, Minister. Just cut a long story short. An apology should be unequivocal and clear.
Mr. Speaker.
Cut the long story short. Rescind the contents thereof. Apologize to the House. We do business. There are a lot of bills pending after this.
Mr. Speaker, may I therefore, with a lot of respect, withdraw that correspondence and unreservedly send an apology to the Honorable House.
Thank you.
May I proceed, sir?
Let the majority leader read out the questions. Then you can proceed to answer. And in your questions, members, those chips on the correspondence will lie where they fell. I will not allow any one of you to go back to it. Deal with the questions on how our athletes are being dealt with, how they are being managed, and how the issues came to this House.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Well guided, and I will proceed to read out the questions as they are listed on the order paper. One is for the ministers to respond to the following issues relating to the role of the ministry in facilitating the Kenya team that attended the Special Olympics held in Berlin, Germany in June 2023 on the following issues. One, how and why the Kenya's team to the Special Olympic Games jetted out of the country without neither the Cabinet Secretary for Youth Affairs, Sports and the Arts nor a representative from the ministry flagging them off. B, how and why the Cabinet Secretary did not deem it reasonable to receive and celebrate the team for their monumental performance during their arrival into the country from the Games. And C, what measures is the ministry putting in place to ensure the anomaly of ill-treating athletes doesn't recur again? 2, Honorable Speaker, on management of aquatic sports in the country. A, explain why Kenya Aquatics has historically been unable to comply with the rules and decisions of World Aquatics, including holding of elections even after a stabilization committee was established in June 2022, on the 20th of June 2022 to be precise. B, enumerate efforts that the ministry has put in place to ensure that Kenya Aquatics Stabilization Committee conducts elections and state when the elections will be conducted so that the World Aquatics can lift the suspension of Kenya Aquatics since 2022 from participating in any activity within the World Aquatics. C, give an undertaking that the ministry will facilitate Kenyan swimmers to participate in the World Aquatics event scheduled for February 2024 in Doha, Qatar, and in the 2024 Summer Olympics in Paris, France. D, lastly, state how the ministry plans to address discrimination, unfairness, and opaqueness in the selection criteria of swimmers participating in various local, regional, continental, and international swimming competitions. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
For better management of the questions, Minister, answer question Roman 1 on the Paralympic Olympics, then you can come to aquatic later, so that we can take supplementaries on the first question, which you will answer, then we go to the next.
Mr. Speaker, before I go straight to answer this question, allow me to thank this Honorable House for affording myself and the Ministry the opportunity to come here and engage with the House on a number of activities that the Ministry is responsible for. Honorable Speaker, I will seek your indulgence, maybe in the course of this submission, to also share with you a bit of other information that touch on the work of this ministry, which particularly set the environment or the ecosystem within which the two particular questions have been set. Honorable Speaker, just as a matter of providing some background, we as a ministry are very alive to the value of sports in this country. In fact, Honorable Speaker, it is the mantra of this ministry, the belief of this ministry, that Kenya's #1 export to the world is our sportsmen and women. Our sportsmen and women do more in branding this country, in bringing honor to this country than anything else. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to assure this House that as a ministry, we are fully committed to addressing the myriad challenges confronting this important sector. Honorable Speaker, when we came to office 10 months ago, we inherited a sporting scene with a number of critical challenges. And allow me, Mr. Speaker, to quickly share those challenges because they are relevant to the two issues that you have invited me here to share. Number one, Mr. Speaker, we found a country that was under suspension by FIFA, and Kenya had suspended FIFA from all international footballing activities. Mr. Speaker, that suspension had a very costly impact on sporting in this country. Harambee Stars, the Harambee Starlets were locked out of competitions to qualify for AFCON, the World Cup, and all that. Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to report to this House that among our first order of business was to engage FIFA very, very quickly. And I did seek and get an appointment with the FIFA president, Mr. Gianni Infantino, and within 1 month, that suspension was lifted. I'm very glad to report to this House, Mr. Speaker, that last Saturday, 19th of August, Kenya formally returned to international football with the participation of Kakamega Homeboys hosting the Libyan side Al Hilal in the first round of the CAF Confederation Cup. Mr. Speaker, the second challenge we inherited was a looming ban
Yes, David Speaker.
The Cabinet Secretary is telling us about the history and the work he has done. He should simply stick to answering the questions that he has been asked, which is about the athletes and the team, a very specific being suspended. Thank you.
Minister, you may proceed to answer the questions.
that this whole area is a complete ecosystem. Let me go to the question on the summer special on Kenya's participation in the 2023 Summer Olympic. Mr. Speaker, I can also confirm that we remained in touch with this team throughout the period of these games. We tracked their participation, and upon their return from this trip, we had a reception at the airport, complete with the traditional dances, Mr. Speaker, which is a tradition for us in this country. We had officers of the ministry. We even had garlands of flowers to garland them and to celebrate them. And Mr. Speaker, I have images and videos of the very elaborate ceremony